Hello there, good evening everyone, and welcome back to part 2 of Margaret Anderson's The Unknowable Gurdjieff, and we had a nice welcome back reading yesterday evening, so if you haven't caught up with that, part 1's available, and it's good to be back for me. It feels like I've not been away. And again, reading these great texts, and I've just was thinking, talking to someone throughout the last few hours, and just about how, although reading these work texts isn't work, a big thumbs up, it isn't work in a sense, it can act as a reminder, a reminding force, I think, Ouspensky and Gurdjieff would say, or a reminding factor to work. And that's why whether you're reading In Search of the Miraculous regularly, Meetings with Remarkable Men, or Beelzebub's Tales, or just whatever syllabus we have going on here at the Four Ideals, at least it acts as a reminding function. And with that, let's get into the text and know Gurdjieff a little bit better. It's called Unknowable Gurdjieff, and maybe by reading it we will get to know him a bit better. And first of all, I'll say hello there to JK Techers, says good evening Lewis and all, welcome. XPTV says hi all, and IOP says got home right on time to catch the stream. And I'm happy to hear that, and welcome. It's lovely to see you all, and if you're watching on catch up at some point in the future, hello in the future. We're going to read 2 more chapters this evening, and chapter 3, actually before we begin, it's vitally important, if you haven't done so yet, that you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share the show on all your social medias to help us grow and develop into a thriving channel. I've been uploading a lot to the old book club app. I uploaded today H.G. Wells's The Star, which is fantastic short story, and I'm working through a lot of H.G. Wells's texts, his shorter stories. We will end with The Island of Dr. Moreau and The Invisible Man at some point, and also Beelzebub's Tales to his grandson. And so, yes, it will definitely help the channel. If you like the video, subscribe and stick around. And hello there, Douglas. Douglas says, hello, Lewis and former clubbers. Great to be back for another live. It's not about the channel, it's about the group. And I agree 100%, Douglas. I think many people would. In a sense, when we're here, fellowship, community together, again, it doesn't matter what channel tag is there. The fact that we're together is the main thing. And hello there, Dale Axelrod's back. And Stephen Larn, hello, good sir. And hello to you, my friend. I hope you've had a nice day. And now that the formalities are over, Chapter 3, Transformation. Everyone who went to Gurdjieff for enlightenment encountered first a mystery. I have always found Salita Solano's account of her first meeting with him interesting, touching, and amusing. She is one of the persons whose life has been changed by what she learned from him, and of course, this is a quote from Salita Solano. It was in 1927 that I first met Mr. Gurdjieff. Margaret Anderson and Jane Heap had invited me to go with them to the prairie at Fontainebleau, saying, there you will see not one man, but 1,000,000 men in one. The magnitude of this integer excited me. I hoped for a demigod, a superman of saintly countenance, not this strange ecru man, about whom I could see nothing extraordinary except the size and power of his eyes. The impact everyone expected him to make upon me did not arrive. In the evening I listened to a reading from his vaunted book. It bored me. Thereupon I rejected him intellectually, although with good humour. Later in the study house, how annoyed I was that women were not allowed to smoke there. I heard the famous music played, I believe, by Monsieur de Hartmann. This, almost from the first measures, I also rejected. A week or so later in Paris, I accompanied Margaret and Jane, who had not quite given me up, to a restaurant where écrevisses were the speciality which Mr. Gurdjieff was coming to eat with about 20 of his followers. He seated me next to him and for 2 hours muttered in broken English. I rejected his language, the suit he was wearing, and his table manners. I decided that I rather disliked him. Years passed. In the autumn of 1934, in a crisis of misery, I suddenly knew that I had long been waiting to go to him and that he was expecting me. I sought him out and sat before him, silent. He was then living in the Grand Hotel over the Café de la Paix, his office, while waiting for a flat to be found. The Priory group had dispersed. There were no followers or pupils near him except Elizabeth Gordon, who sometimes came to the café. 3 friends of mine who had previously met Mr. Gurdjieff also began to go to the café to see him. Within a few days he gave us chapters of Beelzebub to read aloud to him, and thus, by such an accident, we 4 formed the nucleus of a new group, which was to grow larger year by year, until the end of his life. And perhaps she's there referring to the women of the rope, I believe. We have that text that we could also read, and that was Salita Solano's account. Back to Margaret Anderson. After Gurdjieff's death, many people asked us how they could learn more about him. It's hard to know where to start, they said. There are so many Gurdjieff groups now, and so many teachers who haven't time for new pupils, and then I often get the impression that there's a kind of intellectual snobbery about the whole thing, and this puts me off. We too often had the same impression. Besides, it was impossible for us, who had had so many years of first-hand contact with Gurdjieff himself, to join any of the new miscellaneous groups. Once Salita felt it a duty to try and wrote me her reaction. Again, Salita says, "There were so many poor young strugglers and so much nonsense in their questions and comments that it was depressing. There was one young man, a rather new one, who made the only intelligent remark. It seems to me, he said, that the only difference between this and all other groups of religious or philosophical tendencies is the work. All these people, nearly all, are so staunch in devotion and loyalty that one has to love them for it. But there isn't one of sufficient intelligence to pierce those devotional veils, no mind like or in the same game as Ouspensky's. They don't combine mental and emotional, put them to work at the same moment, so will grow gooder and gooder without understanding anything transformational." End quote. Transformational was the key word, and it meant an effort to strip off the mask of your personality so that your essence could develop. Personality being your false picture of yourself, your emotional attitude towards yourself. This stripping operation often presents itself to me now in images. The most frequent one is that I am carrying with me wherever I go a huge sack. In it is my personality, that manifesting animal which expressed itself so incessantly for so many years, and that now lies dormant in the sack, stirring only faintly from time to time in its likes, dislikes, pleasures, rebellions, happinesses, angers, and obsessions. Gurdjieff's teaching on transformation was sometimes given like this. Here's a quote from Gurdjieff. "There is an old Russian saying, 'A hunchback can be straightened only in the tomb.' Just so a man must die to become changed. I wish you not to be non-entity. So first I make you feel like non-entity. Only from there can you begin. It is nothing to know your non-entity-ness. You must experience it personally. You know mentally. To know mentally is nothing, worth nothing. You must have a third kind of knowledge." End the quote. There is a passage in Gurdjieff's book which suggests the kind of knowledge he meant. Its title is "The Sheep and the Wolf." Only he will deserve the name of man and can count on anything prepared for him from above, who has already acquired corresponding data for the ability to preserve intact both the wolf and the sheep confided to his care. An old saying of ancient times definitely showed that by the word wolf is allegorically understood the totality of all fundamental reflex functioning of the human organism, and that by the word sheep is understood the totality of a man's feeling. As for the functioning of a man's mentation, it is represented, according to the saying, by the man himself, who, in the process of his responsible life, owing to his conscious labours and voluntary sufferings, has acquired in his common presence corresponding data for the aforesaid ability always to create conditions for the possible existence together of these two heterogeneous and mutually alien animals, or laws. In every man there must be the constant tribing, that the wolf be full, and the sheep intact. For the wolf, I quote the first of the 5 obligations Gurdjieff gave us. The 5 obligations, 5 strivings for daily effort. 1. Preserve your life. Be just to the body, satisfy its needs, treat it as a good master treats a good servant, and, for the sheep, the other 4. 2. Find your place in the scheme. Understand the meaning and aim of existence. Know more and more concerning the laws of world creation and world maintenance. 3. Develop yourself. Constant, unflagging need for self-perfection in the sense of being. Improve your being. Make being efforts. 4. Help others to develop. Assist in the most rapid perfectioning of other beings. 5. Pay back. To lighten the load of the Creator, pay back in gratitude and effort for the fact that evolution has helped you to get this far. One day, years ago, a group of those whom Gurdjieff called his people was lunching with him in New York. Afterwards, one of the group, Catherine Hulme, typed a report of the table conversation, a report which, because of her prodigious memory, is as factual as if it had been recorded on tape. I will quote it as she wrote it, in the Gurdjieff idiom. The language barrier gives an extra dimension, and the teaching contained in the conversation is typical of Gurdjieff's exposition. And I must say I do quite enjoy when the writer keeps Gurdjieff's idiom, so his accent, how it's written, how it would sound. So that's what's coming up. K attempts to clarify to Sapenchko something Gurdjieff has said. Sapenchko resents this, but with good nature. Only his sudden earnestness betrays his offence. Sapenchko tells K that only Gurdjieff can say such things to him. Not you are small man, but he can say anything to me and I can take it. You know why? Because I love him. Gurdjieff waits until all is said, then turns to K and, in quite another tone and with serious gentle look on his face, begins. Truth, K, one fault you have. Though you are known as kind man, good nature, and though everyone knows you not wish give offence, you do this unconsciously sometimes. Is fault that spoils all life for you. You have not considerateness for state of surroundings. Necessary always know what is around you, state of man around you. With cow you can spit on face of, and he not take offence. He lick, he smile, he shake head, not understand, not offence take. But man around you is already more high, he have states. You must know what is state of every man around you in room. Man, of course, is most of the time sleep. But this make even more important that you be sensitive. Because when he awake, even if only for one moment, he is already in state, for this moment is delicate, sensitive. So you must consciously try understand, be sensitive for him. I know what is state of each man around me, because I am educated man. I have knowledge. You must always try have considerateness for state of surrounding, if you wish be objective bon ton. Never must you offend one thing on earth, even if you offend one worm. One day, he will you repay. You notice never anyone take offence anything I say. Never man angry with me when I tell. You know why? Because I tell exact how is. Objective truth. And hello there everyone, coming in a bit late, and that's quite the statement. And many people like to theorize about Mr. Gurdjieff, his conduct in life, how he would have been if you were, around him in time and space. And that's a very good from his own words. You notice never anyone take offense anything I say. Never man angry with me when I tell. You know why? Because I tell exact how is. Objective truth. Back to Margaret Anderson. On another day in 1936, I think, we were all launching with Gurdjieff in his... We were all lunching with Gurdjieff in his Paris flat. I had been feeling hopeless about ever being strong enough to do the inner work he demanded. He had asked one of the pupils to give up smoking for a while and to turn her longing for a cigarette into what he called an intentional contact between the ordinary world and a higher world. I felt that his words were especially offered to meet my need, and I quote them with slight paraphrasings to make his meaning clear. Hello there, Flibbity Gibbets, Mr. Thompson. It's alive. We're here live together. So welcome. And IOP says, laugh out loud. Is that how he spoke English? Yes, I believe so. Broken English it would have been, as you can tell. Who does a great job? Fritz Peters does a great job of, taking down how he would have sounded. But here is Gurdjieff's advice for giving up smoking. I will tell you one thing that will make you rich for life. There are two struggles, an inner world struggle and an outer world struggle. But these two worlds can never make contact with each other to make data for third world. Even God cannot give the possibility for contact between inner world and outer world struggle, neither can your heredity give it. Only one thing can give it. You must make an intentional contact between the two worlds. Then you can make data which crystallize for the third world of man, called by the ancients the world of the soul. I can give you a small example which will perhaps give you the taste of this intentional contact. You, for example, when you give up cigarettes, you have an outer world struggle, not to buy, not to take, but remember always to break habit. And you have an inner world struggle. You imagine how it was when you could smoke. You imagine it in a different way, more keen and with more longing. And it will seem, with this inner world imagining, even more desirable than it had ever been. You will have made this cigarette an intentional contact between the two struggles, and even by this small effort you will have made data for the third world. This can be a thing for power. I will tell you one very important thing to say each time when the longing to smoke comes. You say it the first time and maybe notice nothing. You say it a second time and maybe nothing. Say it a third time and perhaps something will happen. Say, I wish the result of this suffering to become my own, for being. Yes, you can call that kind of wishing suffering because it is suffering. This saying can maybe take force from your animal and give it to being, and you can do this for many things, for any denial of something that is a slavery. A force such as this has special results, special emanations. Man is man. He can never be another thing, but he can make his body work for another part of him, his mind. If it is easy to subdue the body, then the exercise is no good. If the body will lie down at once, nothing happens. The greater weakness the body has, the more it is forced to struggle, the more labor it does, the more it can give to the mind and to being. End quote. Oh yes, say the Christians, this is exactly what we do. We resist temptation, we renounce, we become better human beings. This is not true. It is true that they often do renounce or try to renounce or think they have renounced. Then they forget that they have renounced, they feel remorseful, and they begin all over again to renounce. In every case, they remain exactly the same kind of people they were in the beginning. The only results they achieve are that at intervals they behave more kindly towards other people, or they become more intolerant and cruel towards them for the sake of dissenters. Some people become fanatical renouncers, and since the exercise of will, so-called, produces strength in anyone, they sometimes become very strong people, strong enough to make a great impact upon others, strong enough to kill them. All this will and effort is haphazard. None of it has any relation to a conscious, self-directed activity for a conscious aim. The Gurdjieff technique for this development is a unique activity, and it has not been presented in any literature, science or teaching in the way it was presented by him. The great science of transformation, the birth of the soul, that conscious second birth which parallels automatic physical birth and for which Gurdjieff had such a marvellous phrase, quote, the arising of the presence of man. This transformation demands years of study and practice for its cooperation. Past joys, he said, are as useless to man in the present as the snows of last year, which leave no trace by which one can remember what they were. Only the imprints of conscious labour and intentional suffering are real and can be used for obtaining good. This good comes to you step by step in great discoveries, for instance, like the one that teaches you why anger is so often an expression of self-love. I shall never forget the day when I first learned this truth. I had spent a week of frenzied anger and rebellion over everything Gurdjieff was asking me to do. The conscious labour was too difficult, the voluntary suffering too unendurable, too impossible, too unreasonable. And then, in one lighted moment, I had a picture of myself, my state, and its cause. I rushed to the Rue de Colonel Renard and said, Mr. Gurdjieff, I see now that it was because of my vanity and self-love that I was so angry. He didn't speak for a moment, then he smiled at me. You not know? He said. No, I said, I hadn't the faintest idea. Never, never shall I forget the way he smiled or the intonation he put into those 3 words. Never shall I fail to remember them as I watch myself making other discoveries that will take me as long a time, and never shall I fail to find comfort in 6 other words of his. He who goes slow goes far. One of my longest struggles was over my need to argue. I have always been an arguer. I long to be convinced, and I can be convinced only if I receive rational answers to my questions. But this tendency was discouraged from the beginning. Asperity, impatience, tendency to argue, I was told, at once put an end to any possibility of work, for work is possible only as long as people remember they have come to the teacher to learn and not to teach. A certain vehemence is characteristic of the arguing type. He becomes unnecessary to the teacher. No feeding exchange is possible between teacher and pupil if the pupil refuses food and the teacher can't get to his larder. And the recalcitrant pupil spoils the atmosphere for others. But why? I kept asking. One of the first things I heard was, be skeptical. Don't take anything you hear on faith. Investigate until you find out whether you can believe it. How can you investigate if you don't reason? And how can you reason if you don't ask questions, state objections, discuss, receive answers? Yes, I like that IOP. Just repeating that quote, he who goes slow goes far. And hello there, Graham. Good evening, my friend. No, I was admonished. When the thinking center is always fighting something, disputing, criticizing, the reason is that it is using the energy of another center. Gurdjieff wished to work only with those who could be useful to him in attaining his aim, and only those who would struggle with themselves could be useful to him. I take it that the refined vibrations obtained from struggle were the caviar he needed for his own food. So I must struggle not to argue, but I can't have faith in anything unless I'm convinced by discussion of its truth. All that you say constitutes a paradox. Paradox is present in all great truths. When you have finally grasped the meaning of transformation and realized how false your picture of yourself has been, when you have discovered the kind of person you really are and heard, as Maurice Nichols says, the little song you've been singing all your life, this is the moment when you can say that you've begun at the beginning. You will never be entirely your old self again. That is, you will know forever that that is what you were and are and will be over and over, but with this difference, the hair's breadth difference, that you now know it and can never forget it, and therefore you will stop short of feeling or showing the intolerance you have always felt. You'll begin to behave towards others as you would like them to behave towards you. The difference being that you will now know how they want you to behave, and you will know how to help them to behave well towards you. You will see that you are they and they are you, and that if everyone could experience this searing revelation, the idea of war would never have arisen. Paul Claudel once said in a radio interview, "I don't hold with the doctrine of know thyself. I advise you to forget yourself. The world will be a better place." What an idea! How can you forget what you don't know? And how can ignorance be regarded as a proper foundation for an evolving humanity? But the great religionists will always prefer forget yourself to Gurdjieff's remember yourself, will in fact look upon his injunction as somehow monstrous. So yeah, it's a lovely book, isn't it? A very interesting approach where she sort of is sharing her own experiences, but also bringing quotes and anecdotes from elsewhere to like jump off from. And yeah, it's rather wonderful. So this is chapter 4 and is where we will end. I mean, it's quite a long chapter, so we're not going anywhere yet. But chapter 4 is called The Unknown Doctrine. Excuse me. And much is written about this unknown doctrine, right? Where did Gurdjieff get the ideas from? What were the influences? Was he part of an inner group of humanity? All these things. And it seems like Margaret Anderson is going to have an attempt at getting to the bottom of it. Chapter 4, The Unknown Doctrine. Why didn't you tell me that the source of the Gurdjieff doctrine traces back to the Gnostics? I forgot to, I said. I forgot because such a fact didn't particularly interest me. Gurdjieff himself was a sufficient source for me. All that he said was so vast that it left me no time to inquire about the original source. The knowledge he knew, wherever it came from, was far more important to me than any inquiries about its historical beginnings. In Gurdjieff's own words, this knowledge traces back to initiate people, or, in another's words, the Gnostics were not the inventors of this ancient knowledge any more than Gurdjieff was. All cults, religions, teachers go to this common initiate source, or pool, or storage place, and take from it whatever they are able. Then, of course, they falsify until nothing is left of the original truths and their vitality. I mean by common source, available to all who are able to take from it. There is another question which I am often asked and which interests me far more than any discussion of sources. What are the things you first heard that convinced you of the value of Gurdjieff's doctrine? The very first? Orage's presentation of that doctrine in a series of formulations that clarified and corrected what we had already vaguely heard of it in Ouspensky's Tertium Organum. In the winter of 1924 in New York, we listened to Orage's oracular talk. We were hearing for the first time ideas of a kind we had never heard before. Then Gurdjieff himself came, presented a group of French pupils in his sacred dances, and talked to a large group of American intellectuals with Orage translating. In the spring we went to Fontainebleau, and there, under Gurdjieff's penetrating eye, as he weighed our capacities of attention, impressionability, alertness, intensity, and sincerity, we listened to chapters of Beelzebub's tales to his grandson read aloud. We began to work on the dance exercises, and we lived the daily life of the Priory, much as Catherine Mansfield has described it in her letters. All this was sufficiently rewarding, but underneath everything that went on at the Priory, there was for me, and for two others, a decisive influence. The two others were Jane Heap and Georgette Leblanc, and the decisive influence was the Orage mind. For myself, I know that without Orage's grasp of the Gurdjieff ideas and his manner of elucidation, I might never have understood enough of them to have investigated further. I can think of no other approach that would completely have held my attention. Gurdjieff's way of teaching, I should say his various ways of teaching, resembled nothing I had ever known or heard of, and were almost impossible for me to understand at first. It was only later that I realized why he taught as he did, instead of the way I wished he would. The fact is that for a long time I was completely baffled by Gurdjieff, but because of the foundation laid during my first year, it would have taken more than bafflement to have turned me away. Many years later, believing that there must be other people who would react as I did, I made a series of resumes of all the material that had most impressed me in the beginning, organizing it into categories I quoted from Orage, largely from Jane and sometimes from simple reformulations of Gurdjieff's allegorical idiom. But again, I was criticized. Quote, this is several quotes of criticism, it seems like. You can't present such formulations to the general public. They are valuable for fifth-year Gurdjieff pupils. I disagree. We heard these things in our first year. We aren't unique. There are other people like us who will respond as we did. No public will take it. People will think you have lost your mind. So far are you from their world? Oh, another cult, they'll say. It's harmful to Gurdjieff to present him like this to a hostile, ignorant public. I disagree again. I'm convinced that if everyone could begin with our beginning, there would be less mystery, mongering, and less antagonism from a hostile and ignorant public. Gurdjieff's more elusive method was a necessary weeding out. Some people must be eliminated at once as those who have no place in them for these ideas. True, but I'm writing for those who have. I believe the introduction we had is the ideal one. Ideal for the mind alone, not for incorporation of the knowledge. That's another matter, the most important, and comes later. I leave incorporation and its mysteries for the next chapters. For the moment, remember this. Some people have a nose for these ideas. In others, there is nothing that Gurdjieff can touch, but there are a few people in each generation who are alive. And another thing, I have seen dozens of people turn away because of inept presentations of Gurdjieff, but among those who were introduced to him as I were, I have never seen one turn away. And I think the technical term, would be magnetic center. One who has even a small magnetic center comes into contact with the ideas and is taken by them, and one without any magnetic center, of course, there's nothing to magnetize the ideas to, so they're not interested. Back to Margaret Anderson. Whether I am right or wrong, here are a few of the summaries I made of the thinking that most influenced me. They give at least what Gurdjieff called a taste. They can't be understood at once, but they contain a potent evocation. You can contemplate them as you do a painting, which you like at first glance and of which you say, "I'm not sure that I understand it, but I feel that I do." There is another factor I must justify giving them at all. Justification is necessary? Yes, I think so. There has always been a general exhortation of silence. Don't talk about Gurdjieff. Don't proselytize. Don't cast pearls. Don't reveal knowledge that will never be understood, etc., etc. This admonition, I believe, has been responsible for most of the misunderstanding that exists about Gurdjieff, the hush-hush attitude, the mystification, the skepticism concerning his mission and his stature. Several derogatory books have been published about him, and I've seen no refutation of them. Ouspensky, Nicol, and others have written books in his intention, and they have been notable. Thus, a precedent has been established against the silence. But books that report a great deal about the daily work of Gurdjieff groups seem to me to leave a great void, that of an abstract introduction which would have illuminated the given concrete details. Can I imagine anyone so pretentious as to claim a total understanding of Gurdjieff's knowledge? No, I can't. Or anyone so treacherous as to betray that part of it which can be revealed only by word of mouth? No, again, I can't. But I can easily imagine someone so incensed over the slandering of Gurdjieff that he would attempt a corrective, not by trying to convey the teaching technique, but by indicating some of the ideas that lead towards the teaching. This is my aim, an introduction, not an exposé. The best introducers I knew were Orage and Jane Heap, and most of the abstractions I present here were made by Jane. She will never publish them, and I believe they should be heard if one is to talk about Gurdjieff at all. They are the ones I've found more illuminating to more people than any other presentation, and to me they are a requisite for an approach to a mind like Mauriac's. I offer them in full consciousness that even after their assimilation you will have heard only a beginning of what must finally be understood and of what must finally be achieved after it has been understood. Such formulations speak to the mind alone, and since the mind alone doesn't lead to the necessary change course of life, it will be visible to anyone, I hope, how little I have violated the prohibition of silence, and how much I hope I may have helped to undo some of the harm that has been unconsciously done. And this next section falls under several different headings: the three centers, development and growth, asleep, self-observation, conscious suffering, chemistries, chief feature, essence and mask, emotion, mind, religion, and religion ends. So if you're familiar with Beelzebub's Tales and with Ouspensky's In Search of the Miraculous, likely these won't be new terms, but there are Margaret Anderson sounds like she's sharing Jane Heap's wisdom, or what does she call it? What does she say? Where is it? Jane Heap. And most of the abstractions I present here were made by Jane, so they are Jane Heap's abstractions. And we begin with the three centers. We are flatteringly called three-centered beings, but we have no future because we have two centers filled only with our past habits. Our centers are empty because we haven't filled them consciously. Everything we have is passive. The effort of this method is to make the three centers work together. Any activity for a human being that is less than three-dimensional is subhuman. We spend our lives wandering, escaping from one error into another. Life becomes always a discussion between three centers, like or dislike, yes or no. All our time and energy is wasted by this discussion. Man is three different persons, three different upbringings, three different contents. We grow up lopsided, with each center outbalancing the others. Only a small part of our life is under control. As we have no will. Will is a state of development, a possibility in a higher center. All we call development now is but an extension of one of the three centers. All our art is but an extension of the emotional center, etc. By wishing, you can't add anything to your three centers. By wishing, a man cannot add a cubit to his stature. You must have a method, a technique. Christianity was put into the Bible, but no technique for development was given. The technique is never written down. Christ's public teaching was given in parable, leaving out the theory and the technique. In Gurdjieff's private teaching, he presented both theory and technique. Every science has to draw upon a special vocabulary. The Gurdjieff vocabulary is as precise as that of any other science. All the terms in the Bible were once precise scientific terms. In my Father's house are many mansions. Turn the other cheek, an eye for an eye. The cross. This method, a mathematical and material explanation of the creation, maintenance and purpose of the universe, man's place in that universe, his function and duty. Man's obligation to operate with the laws which operate the universe, because man has a unique place. The obligation goes with that. The awareness of your place is not a gift of nature. You must find it by conscious effort, not by hope. Man has a potentiality he knows nothing about. The science of ancient times, we have lost all idea of these potentialities. Life provides no outlet for certain potentialities. Paul, the wall of partition. Some people have forcible proof that they have potentialities for development. Make an effort to develop a major organ, mental and emotional development. Nature wanted to produce a self-evolving form. Man is the highest possible development of a self-evolving form. Nature can do no more. We must do it. All further development requires conscious effort. This requires labor comparable to that which nature has expended on our development so far, millenniums of it. In all nature's creations, a certain activity follows a certain form. We are an animal with a formless psyche. A psyche, to have form, must be threefold. There has been all knowledge in the world, but vast bodies of it have been wiped out, wars, calamities, etc., as chalk off a slate. But all over the world we find proofs, if we can read, of a superior knowledge. Atlantis, Stonehenge, pyramids, Mayan architecture, temples, etc. Great cathedrals were built with a conscious purpose to elevate for a moment the vibrations of people. This was a conscious attempt to leaven the masses. The Gurdjieff method, a method of conscious effort and voluntary suffering against inertia and repetition. So like lots of little short statements or abstractions, as Margaret Anderson calls them, coming from Jane Heap and elsewhere. So lots of little quotes or aphorisms, I think Gurdjieff would call them, aphorisms. Development and growth, and in brackets, the difference. So the difference between development and growth in general. A person is small, then he grows up. Development is stages. A development takes place in our body. Teeth, they're there, lying in the gums. We've only become more educated. We haven't developed. The beaver building its dam, physical center extension, not development. Metamorphosis of caterpillar into butterfly, development, possibility of a soul. Why does one follow this method, the fourth way? If you feel dissatisfaction, you'll try something. If you have a need is an internal disequilibrium. You can tell by all your interests what your disequilibrium is, because your interests are set going by your needs. If we desire to develop, we do something about our two undeveloped centers. But if we don't find a method, we run down scale. All our acts are appeasement because we haven't developed. You've investigated methods, but you haven't worked in any method. We all start equal before this unique activity. You are sitting in a chair comfortably. If you leave that chair without meaning to do this method's work, it is better not to leave it. You'll be standing all your life, because you never get back to that first chair once you leave it, since life doesn't stand still. The next little subheading is asleep. Man is asleep. In every religion, in all great literature, you find references to the dream state. Must wake up, asleep in Adam, awake in Christ. All religions talk about being born again. We're asleep in the animal. The body is awake, the eye not. This sleep is comparable to a hypnotic state. A child is put under the power of suggestion, later in life autosuggestion, complete mechanical state. Adults absolutely under a hypnotic spell, like fakir hypnotizing the rabbit. He controls the circulation of the blood. A river has a flow that's not so fast as the current. The hypnotists suggest to you a little faster than life suggests to you. It's almost a desire of man to be asleep. We're so asleep that unless life becomes too difficult, we don't wake up. A shock can waken you. But you must find your reasons for wanting to wake up. Study human mechanicality. When you see how mechanical you are, you begin to awake, just as at the moment of waking from a dream, you know you've been asleep. Begin to compare your sleep and your waking state. After a dream, you're embarrassed at exposure. In life, you're exposed in the same way. You're willing to tell what a sorry figure you cut in a dream, but in life, you excuse and gloss over. No one can say how he's going to act under certain conditions. I know just how I'll act in that situation. This is as wild as to say how you'll act in a dream. In dreams, you're running down energy you didn't use up in the day. If you finished your day, if your centers have finished, you don't dream. Study your dreams. There is a self-contained energy left over in one of the centers. You can discover in which center you contain unused during the day energy. Do you have predominantly physical, emotional, or mental dreams? Emotional dreams wear us out most. The three centers fall asleep separately. Sometimes at the beginning of sleep you jump violently. This is one center letting go of another. Our subconscious brain should be our conscious brain. Everything that has happened to us in life is there, penned up in the cerebellum, escaping only in sleep, trances, etc. The conscious brain is polluted. Make an effort to tap the subconscious. The artist sometimes does this. No, only fortune tellers, sometimes, and unconsciously. To touch it unconsciously is dangerous. A conscious effort to tap the conscience in the back brain. An interesting sentence, isn't it? A conscious effort to tap conscience in the back brain. Okay. ponder on that. The next subheading, self-observation. All great schools, all great systems of thought, all great religions have always striven to give man two freedoms: inside freedom from vanity, self-love, etc., and outside freedom from education, etc. The first steps towards freedom are self-observation, to know thyself. Gurdjieff's system begins with neutral scientific observation of oneself, taking notes on the body in the scientific manner, first the physical, later notes on the mental and emotional centers. The center of gravity of change. You can't change by the mind alone. You must begin with the body, bring body and emotions into line. The body is the only tool you have to work with. Make it a good tool. Resent the body's control of you. Try to establish the physical as something apart from the I. The beginning of adult life is the knowledge that we have an I. Our bodies are fertilizers for a soul. It's a nice one. Our bodies are fertilizers for a soul. The personal equation between you and your body is pernicious. If you woke up in the body of a unicorn, you wouldn't know how to act. You are just as much at the mercy of your own body. You're not responsible for your behavior. You're born embedded in an animal. Yeats's poem, I am buried in a dying animal. You think you know your body, but you don't even know when you scratch your head. Our body is as much an object of the outside world as a tree, a plant, or a stone. Say, I am. I have a body. The French have a better expression. They say, I have cold, not I am cold. We should be conscious of our bodies, aware of our emotions, mindful of our thoughts. Say, I am having a passive thought, or I am having an active thought. Guard against self-deception, subjectivity, introspection. Introspection is bad. We have nothing to look into. You found how difficult it is to manage your body. Our minds don't move. Our environment has paralyzed our minds. Try exercises of mental stretching. We live bound in by our gestures. See how limited you are when you do the exercises. None of us has individual or essential gestures. Won't doing a lot of self-observation make you self-conscious, unnatural? Are you natural? Break the mask. You can find out what is authentic. You'll enlarge your gestures. You'll enlarge your emotion. You'll eventually be able to control your environment. Our environment plays upon us. When Gurdjieff says, don't do as others do, he means don't simply let your environment act upon you. Think up something active to do. The next subheading, conscious suffering. Self-observation is conscious suffering. We live only 70 years because of the useless suffering we submit to. We must sacrifice automatic suffering. Dig out your essence, discover your type. This will be an active alternative against unconscious behavior. Behaviorist phenomena is instinctive speech. It can be read by everyone around you. Heredity has nothing to do with development. Heredity is simply inclinations. Don't worry about it. Just go on observing yourself. Cast yourself for the role of a conscious human being. Act this role in public and private. Recondition yourself. Make every act purposive. Give play only to those ideas and emotions which are unassociated with personality. This will counteract repetition. And I like that advice. That's good advice there. Unconscious effort defeats us. Most exercises only deplete your energy. Gymnastics that are not made to store energy, sport, wear out the physical center. Boxers no good after 30. Artists who use emotion unintelligently become pathological, have wasted their emotional centers. One half of the maladies treated by doctors only mean that the centers have been badly spent. Self-observation is the hardest of all things to do. It's the effort that counts, the remembering to do it. But how do you do it? By self-control? No, not self-control. That uses up energy. Self-observation stores energy. Do you do it by using suggestion? No, suggestion won't help at all. Suggestion is simply keeping an idea in your mind. It is a passive thing. You must do an active thing. Give an example. Live a life of friction. Let yourself be disturbed as much as possible, but observe. We're not accustomed to make such effort. We don't like friction. Then no emotions are aroused. When there is no friction, there is no development. When you're upset, you can observe better. Yes, but you're in a high state and can do it better. But we self-observe all the time. It never stops. On the contrary, it never happens. It's the greatest effort man has ever undertaken. It's not congruous with the rest of our activities. Actors self-observe. An actor is the very worst observer. An actor may be aware of what he is doing, but there is a difference between self-awareness and self-observation. Self-observation is self-directed activity. Awareness is simply of the outside. To see is passive. To look is active. And I think actually we're going to leave it there because I don't know, it feels quite weird reading all of these observations and abstractions from Jane Heap. So I think that's enough of the abstractions for now. We'll end with to see is passive, to look is active, and when we begin the next reading, we'll finish off these abstractions. We'll finish the abstractions and go on to the next chapter, which will be, if you're interested, A Life for a Life, which Margaret Anderson has mentioned briefly before. And yeah, any comments, any questions, any queries, get them in before we say goodbye. And we'll likely be back on Monday again for the next live reading. And I'll have some uploads for the rest of the week that you can rewatch or catch up on, or maybe you hadn't seen them previously, so you can watch them anew. Graham says, she is an excellent counterbalance to the male-dominated view of Gurdjieff, as are most of the women in the work. And that's a great point, isn't it, Graham Fortune? We have, or I have a copy of the PDF of Women of the Rope, I believe. Women of the Rope. And so maybe we could read that as well, right? We can get this fuller perspective of, again, the women of the rope. And I think, yeah, I love all of the more feminine takes. Again, we read Idiots in Paris, didn't we? And Elizabeth Bennet and John Bennett focus on very different aspects of the work and of their experience. The same is true of Olga and Thomas de Hartmann, which we'll read next. They have a very different perspective. So, yeah, they're very important. The feminine energy that comes in. And so, yeah, I think you're right. And again, the lights of Maurice Nicoll and Ouspensky are very intellectual, aren't they? They're for the mind. Whereas Fritz Peters is almost more for the emotions, for the soul, as are some of the women. J.K. Tekker's says, there is so much in that reading, Lewis. We will all need to listen to this again a few times. And yeah, thanks for seeing that, JK Techers. That's why I felt like I should stop, because there's so much there already. Like, just to go on and on reading all of these abstractions, maybe it's unnecessary, and we'll come back in the next reading, part 3, and we'll begin with some abstractions and then go into the next chapter. So yes, again, just like some of the other texts we've read on the last channel, you can take any one of those, right? What did IOP VXV shared a quote that I read: "He who goes slow goes far." And so you could just sit with that, couldn't you? That statement, and sit with it, and yeah, ponder it. What does it mean for you? What does it mean in the work? What does it mean in life? And Stephen Lance says, so many quick fire heavyweight ideas, and that's right, Stephen. Again, why I have decided to stop, because there's only so many quick fire ideas one can take, and I felt that was enough quick fire ideas. So, like I say, it's great to be back. I have some historical videos that I'll be uploading moving forward, some new ideas that I want to share, of course, about the 4 ideals, religious unification and the soul, and all of these sort of perennial and syncretic things that I think about and want to share. And so do be sure to reach out via email if you'd like to discuss any of these things. If you'd like to give some input into a video, perhaps we could collaborate, work together, and create something special. But for now, that's all for this evening. And as always, it's lovely to see you. Do subscribe if you haven't yet, and share on your social media if you happen to have a social media, so that we can develop, or although, to be fair, as Margaret Anderson has said, anyone with a magnetic center or who are interested in, it's a rather obscure title for a YouTube channel, isn't it? The 4 ideals. What does that mean? Huh? But maybe that's a subconscious thing I've done to keep us small, and what's the word I'm looking for? No, I'm not going to think of the word. Sorry, it's gone. I'm still trying, but it's not there. So, yes, it's good to be back, reading another great Gurdjieff text. Lots to think about, hopefully, as I was saying in the introduction and at the beginning. It's a reminder to work. It's not work itself, but it does remind us. So we'll go off to sleep, maybe set an intention for the morning, maybe wake up and try and spend some quiet time sensing our body. How do we feel, the emotions, the mind, and see how we go. Inshallah, tomorrow we'll have a new opportunity for work, for awakening, for love, for life. And yeah, hopefully we all get that opportunity. JK Techers, you're very welcome. And Stephen Lyon says, in focus. I was going to say, and I still can't think of it. No. So, a real snappy, punchy, cool outro there. Me trying to think of a word. I'm still trying. But maybe I'll post about it if I think of it. And for now, thanks everyone for being here. Enjoy the rest of your week. Get in the comments if you are interested and want to discuss. Also, the Discord server, many people are coming in now and it's growing nicely. We have lots of different characters in there. So if you'd like to be a character inside and have discussions at all hours of the day, reach out in a comment or via email. But for now, I'll say good night, and JK Tekkers says good night one and all. Good night, my friends. Look after yourselves, and I'll be back very soon with part 3 and some more abstractions and musings. But for now, I'll say good night. Look after yourselves. Enjoy the rest of your week, and I'll see you next time. Bye now.